Hello and welcome to episode 1373 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Wednesday, February 12th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, good day, sir. How are you?
I am cold. It is cold. I don't want to be cold anymore.
I could not be at your house right now. Folks, we've had a heat outage in the Mason residence, and unfortunately, the whole damn thing is kaput, huh? You're going to have to get a whole
Yeah.
restructure system now, right? Which the plus side is you're going to have a brand new state of the art system. The downside is you got to pay for a brand new state of the art system. So that is a pain in the butt. I cannot fathom that. You said it's been going into the low 30s at night. That's an
Yeah.
absolute nightmare. You
hmm
know I'd be an icicle at this point and I'd be completely frozen over.
It's bad enough that like my office doesn't have heat ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so, but at least like when I'm getting really cold, I can go inside, take a break, eat something, watch some TV, and like warm back up. Now I
Mm-hmm.
cannot. Now it is. I
No,
walk back into my house and it is still,
it's even
I think
colder.
I think I like I've been working till like 3 o'clock in the morning the last few nights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every time I have walked into my house at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to bed, it is like 47 degrees in my house.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
it
die.
is. It
I, I
is a
would
nightmare.
I would have
So,
some real struggles. Thankfully, they're coming out tomorrow. Get things back on track. Thaw y'all out,
mhm.
and hopefully talking some baseball and the fact that pitchers and catchers are reporting. Like we made it. We made it through the winter as far as baseball. Obviously, weather has not cooperated because we had a nice week there. Actually, the week I was the sickest with the flu was actually beautiful outside. So I was actually extra bummed. I could have been taking the dogs on walks, but in this beautiful like 70 something degree weather, then by the time I get healthy, we're dipping into the 30s at night too. So I'm over the weather. Obviously, as y'all know, honestly, once the temperature starts with a 6, I'm pretty much over it. So let's get let's get into the spring as soon as possible. Got a few moves to talk about, and then we're going to start our third base preview today. We're back again on Friday as well to dive deeper in, but we'll get to the first three tiers today. Pretty big move here that really upsets some folks that drafted in the fall and winter for sure. And this is the danger of drafting closers that aren't, the established studs. Because our first move is that Kenley Jansen is going to the Angels, and obviously he's not going there to be anything but the locked-in closer. So on the plus side, that adds another locked-in closer to the pool. Now it is a 37-year-old Kenley Jansen on a mediocre to bad team. We'll call them bad. I'm not even going to say mediocre. They're bad on a bad team, but the Ben Joyce shares are dicey now. And frankly, I think it would be fair to say that they were dicey even before this. I don't think this is just a hindsight take. I like Ben Joyce. He's really exciting, throws 105, has a lot of excitement. Still kind of figuring out how to use it though, right? Like he doesn't really have an impressive strikeout rate. It's kind of like that Bruce Dark Ratterall situation where he's throwing these 100 plus mile an hour BBs, and yet we're looking at a 23% K rate. That is so pedestrian for a reliever, especially when you average 102. And I know velo is not the only thing that gets strikeouts. In fact, a lot of times it is a breaking ball. But what do you think of this move here? Are you in on Kenley? Are you playing the upper end of the saves pool, or is someone like Kenley somebody that you go for where you take, an established guy, even though he's on a crummy team?
Yeah, I mean, I love to play in the upper end. Like, I don't mind like a Kenley as like my second closer, but I'm always
Yes,
making sure, or at least trying to make sure that I'm getting one of the top 10 closers, at
me too.
least one of those guys. So there's so much turnover and so much stuff can happen. Getting one of those kind of locked in guys that you're not worried about for me is just worth the money because, like we always say,
Absolutely.
you're gonna pay for saves one way. This is not the old Matthew Berryism of like never pay for saves. That was for 10 team,
Right.
ESPN leagues, right?
And
And then
and and back when there were like maybe not 30 locked in guys, but like
yeah,
22, right?
yeah,
Like 20 plus teams had guys that were the A guy that you could actually pay
hmm
for. And so that was good advice. I agreed with it. I adhered to it. In this universe though, no.
no,
You got to go get a guy, and there's not enough to go around. So I'm also with you. I play at the top end. Kenley as a second or even a third if I'm really paying for saves. I don't necessarily go for three closers, but as my number two, I got no problem with a Kenley. I really don't want him as my number one, though. I want one of those
yeah,
big dogs. And the numbers are there. Paying for saves pays off. Like,
Yep.
sure, you have an Edwin Diaz season where he fell apart that one year where he gave up
Yep.
80 billion homers.
Roll
Guys
the
can get
Chapman
hurt.
falls off or something
Yep.
like that. Like
Like,
that can happen. But ultimately, more often than not, the top 10 closers pay out the best
absolutely.
values. It's just
Absolutely.
so
So
yeah.
what are you doing with Joyce then? Is he somebody that you're specking on, or is this too bad of a team that you don't even want the secondary guy? Is he even the secondary guy, or is it this guy like Ryan Zefferson? I know was starting to get some buzz behind Joyce when it was perceived that Joyce would be the guy, and then Ryan Zefferson. Like, where are you as far as the rest of the Angels bullpen? Is it a complete stay away, or do you think Joyce prices plummets, and then maybe you would get some cheap saves from him?
I think in a DC, I would draft Choice just
Okay,
because I think there is a very logical uh, opportunity for the Angels to trade Jansen midseason.
that's a great
So,
call.
like, I mean, I don't think anybody expects the Angels to be competing this year. So,
No.
and this is a 1 year deal. So, what would they have? What reason would they have to keep Kenley Jansen on the roster?
Right.
Come trade deadline. So I think Joyce would be the guy to target for the second half of the season. But other than that, no, I'm not. I mean, I think Jansen's the dude until he gets traded. So,
Yep.
uh,
That's
but
exactly how I see it.
also like factor that into like your DCs, right? Because you need to draft usually 7 relievers in a DC, and most of those guys are not going to be established closers. Joyce probably will be the guy come August 1st.
In the second half. Looking at, and it's just a sample of four. Four drafts here since this signing that we see on Ben Joyce's profile. He's going post pick 300 now, so it's over 100 pick drop. And in one of these drafts, he went pick 398. Now I don't know if that was a DC or not. It doesn't tell you the exact type of draft that it is, but obviously the price is coming way down. I got no problem with that. If you're starting with in the 350s and lower for Joyce, like you're saying, as one of your, fourth, fifth closer types or reliever types that you could get some saves from, he could be a second half closer for you. So now he becomes a bit more compelling. I didn't really like him when he was going between like 150 and 200, just because I was worried, not just about them maybe getting somebody, but also just about the fact that maybe he's not the ace guy who can get all these strikeouts. Because the thing too, at least sometimes when you're drafting these guys that might have more of like a fireman situation, think like Andres Munoz before he kind of
Mm-hmm.
became the dude. At least he was getting you a boatload of strikeouts with the great ratios. Obviously now he has ascended into a true closer. He got hurt last year. I think that was really the only thing that slowed him down a little bit. But Joyce wasn't doing that. Now you're going to have to go through the first half, might put him in for a week here and a week there for injury, and then in the second half, once they trade
Mm-hmm.
Jansen, boom, you got a second half closer. So that's the outlook now for Joyce. And then I don't think there's anybody else I would really look at. Like I said, Zefferson was kind of interesting when it was Joyce, then Zefferson, but as a third guy, I don't think I'm going that deep on the LA bullpen.
No, I just don't think the team's good enough to worry about it. I mean, and at the end of the day, like this team is like this bullpen is filled with lefties. See, there's
Yeah, it
4
is.
lefties in this bullpen. Like
Isn't that crazy?
that is great. I can't remember the last time I saw that.
Yeah, that is
And
not something
and
that
they
you
have
see very often.
3 lefty starters.
Now, I wonder, is there anything on that where you would maybe downgrade any of the lefties in division? Now, they don't play as many division games as they used to. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that you would like move off of Jordan Alvarez or anything like that. They don't have Tucker anymore. But like Seager, is there anything to that? Or obviously the Angels are crappy that you just don't care
Yeah,
enough?
I don't just
Okay.
don't care. I
Yeah,
do
I
also
think,
want to mention like Robert Stevenson should be coming back from Tommy
right.
John,
Forgot about
and
him.
he actually could be the guy in the second half if he is looking like because he was supposed to be the next closer,
That's
and
right.
then
They paid
had
him.
to get Tommy John. So maybe Joyce isn't a guy you really want to stash because there's no guarantee that Joyce is the dude. If Robert Stevenson comes back and is looking good.
That's a great call out. I'm glad you said that. I'm sure we would have gotten a comment if you hadn't done that. So great call out there. Robert Stevenson, complete afterthought in your DC. So if you want to go with the long spec, I think Stevenson's the guy to go for there. I still think you can go for Joyce, pick 350, 400, sure. But yeah, like you said, maybe it's not as guaranteed that he's the August 1st closer if Stevenson's back and ready to
I
go.
wouldn't even go that high on Joyce, to be honest. I think he's going to completely plummet. If I'm not getting him outside of the top 400, then I'm probably not going to
Then
draft him.
pass. Okay. I think that's very reasonable. Very reasonable there. Boy, egg on our face, man. Last episode we were making fun of Minnesota for not doing anything, and now they go out and sign Ty France. No, obviously, we were clowning on them, and I think rightfully so during the Harrison Bader chatter. This is basically like an infield version of that, where they bring in a guy who looks like he's going to be a short side platoon type. Ty France, kind of an interesting player from like an MLB standpoint. I've liked him. I think he's a decent hitter, but hasn't really made a big dent on the fantasy landscape the last couple years. Do you see anything here in Minnesota, or is this just short side platoon fodder?
Yeah, I think this is just short side platoon, and even if he was a strong side platoon guy, which obviously he wouldn't be, there just isn't enough juice in that bat to be
Right.
interesting because where his value comes from is accumulating. So, like, unless there's an injury, which hey, it is Minnesota, so that could happen very, very quickly. You're
True.
just not drafting Ty France. So, like, I think Ty France is even in a 15-team mixer is just a pickup if somebody goes down and Ty France ends up in full-time playing time.
Yep. Yep. I think that's totally fair. By the way, I think I said third base. I meant shortstop preview that we're starting today. So
Yes.
pardon me on that. But we are getting into shortstops, and we're going to get through the first three tiers here today. So we're going to be talking superstars. Let's start at the tippy top. Tier one, Bobby Witt Jr., Ellie De La Cruz, and Gunnar Henderson. Of course, we will take them in order. We got to talk about all three of these guys. These are studs. Witt, of course, goes as high as the number one overall pick. He's been taken number one in some DCs. De La Cruz has as well, and Gunner's gone as high as two. So these are boom, cream, cream, cream of the crop. You can throw Mookie Betts in there too. Oh wait, he's in the next tier. Sorry, but he's also a firm first rounder. Let's start with Witt. Is he somebody you would take at the one, or are you Otani? I mean, where are you on the number one overall pick right now?
I think I lean Witt here.
Okay, so you
Only
would consider him. Okay, go ahead.
I just have minor concerns. Like they're not major concerns on Otani, and I think I would have Otani at two.
Hmm.
But can we reasonably expect Otani to steal 50 bases again, especially if he's working his way
With his
back in
pitching,
pitching?
yeah.
I don't know that they want to risk him, accidentally getting his hand stepped on
Hmm.
or sliding awkward and like fucking up his shoulder or something like that or his hand. So I feel like I'm not saying they're going to put brakes on him, but like expecting him to have a 50-50 season again is just insanity.
Yeah, don't do
Uh,
that.
yeah, but two, I think like he's probably going to be more of a teen stolen base guy.
Okay, so
And
you're predicting a big drop off then,
yeah,
because he had 20 the year before in 135 games, 11 in 157 and 26. So we've seen him down in that 11 to 25 range there, and the 59 again, the special historical season. I agree with you. I don't think I would project him anywhere near that. I am surprised that there are some projections that are up in the 40s. I'd probably put him closer in the mid 20s, but I think you bring up reasonable concerns that like, hey, they don't want to risk it. And is that extra base, especially with the great hitters that they have, right? Because everybody that
yeah.
comes up can do damage for them. Getting him from first to second, is it really worth any potential risk that could take him off the mound or out of the lineup? And I think that is a no. So I do think that's going to be more of a yellow light, and even could be a bit reddish, depending on how things are going when he returns to pitching. So I do think it does make a reasonable case to put somebody like Witt at the number one. Where does he go from here? Because remember, he also had a big dip in stolen bases. He went from 49 to 31 last year. Now, everything else got better. His power production went up. His batting average soared up to 332. So he still had a brilliant, brilliant season. Is he going to be more that 30-30, or do you think he could flirt with the 40s again and maybe even push 50? He was one shy of it in 2023. What do you think Witt's steals are this year?
I think they're probably in the low to mid 30s.
Okay,
So, but
so same as last.
yeah, I just he's such a good hitter that it's really hard to steal bases when you're rarely on first.
True,
Like
true. Just always
you're on
ripping doubles, triples, and
yeah
homers.
yeah when you're just getting extra base hits, it's kind of harder to steal. But I think he'll get plenty. I think 30 plus, and I just think he's one of the safest guys. And while I mean, obviously, like after last season, it's really hard to be like, well, there's another level for him. But like I I almost wonder if there is more power in that bat and that we
I
could
think
see
I
like
think
a
there
40
is.
home run season
Mm-hmm.
at some point. Obviously, the batting average is going to regress, but I do think he is just a very, very good in zone hitter. He makes good swing decisions. He's aggressive in the zone. And I just think he is an absolute stud at the position. So like, yeah, he is my top player on my board, just kind of edging out Otani.
Yep, I think that that is perfectly reasonable there. There's a few guys that you can really consider for that number one spot. There's such a rich first round. And I do think the 40 home run power, if it might not come this year. Remember, he's only 25 years old, Witt. And so, it might take a year or two, but I do think he could develop that 40 homer power, and that would just be incredible. He's a absolute lock stud. The latest he goes is 5, which, boy, can you imagine getting Bobby Witt Jr. at 5? That feels
I
really, really good.
I wonder what draft that must have been like.
I mean, so
It must have
Otani,
been a while
Judge,
ago because
Ellie, but like, damn.
somebody takes Skeens in the top 5.
Yeah, could have been something like that where one of the pitchers
Yeah,
jumped up, Skeens or Scooble, and it ended up pushing him down. I do see a draft here, and I don't know if it was the one where Witt went 5, but Acuna's gone 1 in a draft, which is a bit surprising to me.
that's
I
crazy.
don't think I'm ready to do anything like that, especially in a situation where he's guaranteed to miss some time.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's even crept up into
I
the
just
one
saw him go in
slot.
the 3rd round of Elite League.
That I can get on board with, even with the
That
missed
that's
time.
probably that is probably where Acuna should be going. Is
Yeah,
in the
and we'll
3rd
talk
round.
more about him during
Yeah.
the outfield preview. But yeah, I could get on board with that. All right, let's talk Ellie. And we took it on the chin last year. We were amongst the group that said, "Be careful. There's some worries here." We saw the absolutely wretched September that he had in 2023, and it was scary. I was absolutely scared. I put him on my bus list. Take the full L there. I absolutely ate it. He was unbelievable. He just volumed his way to greatness. The fact that he still had 218 strikeouts simply didn't matter. He hit 259, which was even pretty good, right? Like, if you had told me he went 25, 67 with like a 225 average, I'd have said, okay, yeah, that still works. I'll still take the L. But he ended up going 259 on the average, greatly exceeded my expectations there. 67 steals, of course, led all of baseball, and 25 homers. He was brilliant. So now, instead of being a pick at the elbow there, the first, second round turn, or firmly into the second round, he's now firmly in the upper half there. His max pick over the last month of Draft Champions Leagues is 6. So you can't wait too long to get Ellie. Are you in now? Have you changed your tune after last year? We were both out. Are you in now on Ellie? And what does he do for an encore after last year's brilliant campaign?
I mean, I'm in as in he deserves to be kind of a first rounder and
Okay.
an upper first rounder at that. I still have concerns. We're still talking about a guy with a 31% strikeout rate. He's an
Hmm.
XBA of 240 each of the last 2 years. Um, he doesn't elevate the ball in the way that you'd like to see him elevate the ball. He has 33% ground ball rate, or sorry, fly ball rate, and a sub 10% launch angle, or 10-degree launch angle, and he still makes terrible in zone contact. And like, when we're talking about in zone contact, around 85% is what we're looking for as league average. And
Okay.
I always say, like, below 80%, I'm worried. Like, I get really worried.
Right.
Ellie De La Cruz is 79.4.
Now,
So
with
now
his
now
blazing speed, though, how much, because,
is
and I
he's
understand
got
like XBA
blazing.
and the
He's
value
got.
there, but like, where do you factor that in to help mask some of those issues?
I think his blazing speed and his extremely fast hands,
Hmm.
um, and his aggressiveness. Right. Part of the reason why he doesn't make a lot of in zone contact or enough in zone contact is because he's so aggressive in the zone.
Right.
So like I think there is I think there's something to be said for like, hey, like, he is just such a physical specimen that he is going to overcome a lot of these things. I do think that long term, and we're really, 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 really far away from long term. We're talking
Right.
about a
He's 23 years
23.
old next year,
I
or this
do
year,
work.
rather.
I do worry at some point if he like kind of falls into the Javi
I
Baez
knew you were going to
territory.
say it, and I think it's fair. I think we have to
And I
bring it
got
up,
yelled
right?
at. I got yelled about this recently on the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast because I made this comp and Dave did not like it, but I stand by it. Like, Javi Baez was amazing until he wasn't. I do think
Right.
that at some point, and I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon. Like, we're probably 6, 7, 8 years away from this even becoming a concern. And Ellie De La Cruz could completely change as a player. He's 23.
Right. He could develop to cover
Yes.
some of those holes, right? That is definitely fair. And on that comp, I want to also say like Baez never stole the kind of bases that he
No,
did,
no, no.
and he didn't have the same speed. But if we'd have had these stolen base rules in play, I think Baez would have been a more consistent 30 steal type guy. So
Yeah.
it's not a 1-to-1 comp. It's really more about the aggressive swing and miss and how quickly that can take you off the table. Look what
Yeah.
happened to Tim Anderson, another guy who had
Yep.
horrendous plate skills that always made us scared, but he just kept out running it with the great BABIPs until he didn't. And like you
Yep.
said, we're a long way away from that concern with Ellie
Yeah.
because he is so young, but you can't
And
pretend that there aren't some concerns with that swing and miss.
like I mean, Ellie just crushes the ball, just crushes the
Mm.
ball. And so like
Tattoos the piss out
I'm
of it.
not saying that like you shouldn't be taking Ellie De La Cruz in the top 3 or 4 picks. I'm probably not. But like if I'm at 6 and Ellie falls to me, like I'm probably just taking Ellie. Like
Yeah, I think I would too.
I think there are some roster construction issues that you just have to think about when you draft Ellie De La Cruz, right? Like he is not going to give you a plus batting average, and that is something you're going to have to make up for very quickly. So if you draft like an Ellie De La Cruz, I would be targeting like a Freddie Freeman in the second round, or
Right.
someone who's going to give you a bunch of plate appearances with a really good average,
I
and
do
not
agree
be a
with
zero
that.
done thing. So like just be if you draft Bobby Witt Jr., if you draft Jose Ramirez, you draft those kind of guys who like fill up all 5 categories, but especially batting average, you have a lot more options second, third, fourth, fifth round, right?
Hmm.
Ellie Cruz, he's going to fill up stolen bases. He's going to get you enough home runs, but you really need to worry about your batting average because you're going to be eating a hell of a lot of plate appearances with potentially like a 240 batting average. I know he
Yep.
hit 259 last year. I don't expect him to hit 259 again. I would peg him for probably like a 240 to 245. So just keep that in mind when you're drafting, if you draft Ellie, that you need to kind of make up for that later on.
Yeah, build that foundation. Let that be your tiebreaker for those next few offensive pieces so that you can take on a potential 230 because it could happen and he could still get you so many homers and steals that you don't care overall, but batting average is really difficult to make up. So then if you take another guy who is more in like the 250, 260 as part of your foundation, so another 600 plate at bats of that, that's where you can start to get in trouble. So I do agree there. Take Ellie early. I fully agree that he's a top 5 guy. No problems with that. Just protect your batting average in case you don't get another 259 because I do
Yeah.
think it's prudent to plan for something worse than that. All right,
Yeah.
what about Gunner? He went ahead and said, hey, I'm an absolute stud as well. His progression, has really panned out beautifully there. He hit the ground running in that first sample, 34 games in 2022. Then his first full season was pretty darn good with a 28-10, 255. Didn't knock anyone's socks off, but was still very good. And then last year hit another level, 37 bombs. He said, what's wrong with that wall? I got no problems with it. I know he's a left-hander, so he doesn't have to deal with it as much. But 37 homers, 21 steals, 21 for 25, too. Very efficient on the bases and a beautiful 281 average while improving both his strikeout and walk rates. He just looks like a golden god. 24 years old this year, part of a great team. They are moving that fence in a little bit more too. So if he does get into some of his oppo power, he might sneak an extra homer or two to the left field area. What's Gunner do after a huge, massive season in 2024? More of the same in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's just more of the same. I think like my big concerns with Gunner previously were like, hey, can he hit lefties? Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
can.
Sure can.
He's just an absolute stud. Like, is he great against lefties? No, but like he hit 257 with 8 home runs last year, and that is totally fine, especially when you consider like he's just mashing every single righty that comes
Yes.
up. So
No reason to take them out, right? That's what we're looking for
mhm,
with those guys that might have lefty issues is don't give the team a reason to take those extra plate appearances from you so you don't get the supplemental 24 runs, 25 ribbies, 8 homers, and 6 steals, which he did against lefties. So yeah, I'm totally with you there. I think Gunner is just a god and taking him in the top 5 totally makes sense. Again, it is a remarkably rich first round, so you can go a lot of different directions. You don't necessarily
yep,
have to take one of these shortstops, but they're all super, super viable there in that top 5. All right, let's jump into the second tier because this is where I think we start to get some real fun questions here. Francisco Lindor, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, CJ Abrams, Corey Seager, and Willie Adames. Lindor, ho hum, just another great season. Now he did start slow, right? Like it was one of those situations where, if you had him on your team, you were looking, you're like, man, this is not gone the best in the first half. It was kind of ho hum because he was only hitting 253. He had the power and speed, 17 and 18, and the counting categories were good at 63 and 52 for the runs and ribbies respectively. But he really dialed things up in the second half. 95 games in the first half to 57 games in the second, and he only hit one fewer homer with 16. He had 11 steals on 12 attempts and hit 306 with the batting average. That was the real key there. Now, we saw the 254 average in 2023, and like I said, after the first half of 24, it was looking like more of the same before the big surge. Where do we go from here with the average? Because if there is a flaw, it's the fact that he is more of like a 270s and as low as 254 within the last 3 years. Is this just where he lives now in his 30s? Or could he spike another 280 plus, which we actually have not seen now since 2019 for Lindor? Does he pick up where the second half left off, or was that just regression to the mean to kind of make up for the slower first half with Lindor?
I mean, his XBA was like 283. So I think he could do that. Like you get some extra BABIP help, or just runs hot for a little extra time. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I actually have Lindor above where like Betts is in terms of my ranks, which is why we're talking about him now as opposed to Mookie Betts, who we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Right.
And my initial projections actually had him above Gunnar Henderson. I think Lindor
Ooh.
should be a mid first rounder.
I love him. So you're going to get
So,
absolutely no dispute from me
yeah.
on that
We're,
with regards
we're
to
talking
Lindor.
about a guy who was one stolen base last year away from his second straight 30-30 season, and now he's going to be hitting in front of Juan Soto. So like, yeah, like I absolutely adore Francisco Lindor. This is one of the reasons why I'm totally fine drafting towards the back end of the first round, because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you can get a Lindor and then another stud in the top of the second. So I'm all here for Francisco Lindor this season.
Yeah, I think he's, saying a bargain in the first round. It's relative, right? It's all relative. But he's got a 15 ADP, so he's right there on the wheel. I love picking 15. I love the back-to-back picks, so I'm totally with you there. In fact, the two guys that go in that order at 15, 16 are Lindor, Vlad Jr. I'd have no problem starting a team with those two. I think that's a really, really great foundation. And if Lindor's average is closer to the 270s or even dips back to 254 for some reason, Vlad would be there to help protect it a bit and bring things back up. But yeah, I can't really add much to what you said there about Lindor. I think he's a god. I think he is a bit of a first round bargain, and I've got no problem getting slotted with a late first round pick because Lindor is almost certainly going to be on my team at that point. All right, we did talk. Oh, wait, we'll do Trey Turner first. But we did talk Betts at second base, so we're probably not going to go super deep on him this time around. But let's talk Trey Turner. Remember, we go all the way back to 2023, where his first year in Philly started off terribly. Things were not going well. We know the fans rallied around him, and he had a great close. And he still had great fantasy numbers too, by the way. He ended up with 26 and 30, but the triple slash really rallied there when the fans backed him. He ends up hitting 266, 320, 459. Well, then last year, the only thing that really slowed him was the injury. The slash line was up to 295, 338, 469, the Trey Turner that we expect. And he was a steal shy of 2020 in 121 games. So on a per at bat basis, he was a god yet again. He'll be 32 this year, coming off a season where he did miss 41 games. Any concerns there for Trey, or is this just business as usual with Trey Turner, third year in Philly now?
Yeah, I mean, I just think Trey Turner is one of the really nice early values. He's going in the second round, and I've seen him go as late as around 30th overall.
Has he become
So
boring at this point?
I guess so, but we're also talking about a guy who he missed some time last year, so he only played
Right.
121 games and still went 21-19.
That's so
Uh,
good. The strained
like
left
with
hamstring, by the way, was
yeah,
was the injury. Actually, I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna look to see how many steals he had when he came back to see if it affected him at all, because I can't
yeah.
remember.
So like, I mean, he's just such a steady producer, and if he gets back to being like 155, 160 game player like he was in 22 and 23 respectively, like he could go back to being kind of a 25-30 guy. So like, I'm totally fine taking him in the second round. He's actually a major target for me.
He had 9 steals. He was 9 for 12 and 391 plate appearances. That's a 14 full season pace. So it, probably did take him down a little bit, but he was fully healthy to end the year. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be an issue coming into this year. I still think you project him for upper 20s with a chance at being a 20, 25 homer, 30 steal plus type guy, right? And then as far as the batting average goes, do you really think 2023 was just the blip there where it was that first year the big deal? He was pressing, whatever the case may be, hits 266, but then back to 295 last year. Are you projecting him in the 280s, 290s, or do you have concerns that 2023 could come back around on Trey?
No, I mean, I think he's just a generally good hitter. Like,
Yeah.
so, I mean, maybe it dips back down 280-ish, something like that, but he's hit 295 or better in each of the each of the last 5 seasons or 6 seasons, I guess. If you
Six
kind
seasons
of
in a
don't,
movie.
yeah, if you don't include, when are we getting that movie? If we
I
don't
don't know,
include
soon,
2023,
hopefully.
yeah, I really need it. So, um, yeah, I think he's just an overall good hitter, and this is a great offense for him to be kind of at the top of. So I love
Yeah.
Trey Turner.
Digging deeper on the steals, by the way, he in August he only had one attempt. In September he had eight. Now he was only 5 for 8, so it wasn't the most success rate. But seeing that he had 8 attempts tells me that the hamstring was feeling fine. I'm not too worried about it as far as that lingering and cutting his steals. I think you project him for being the stud that he's been, and you gladly take him in the second round. I got no issues with Trey there. So, like I said, we did cover Mookie Betts in second base because we've been doing, the 5 game eligibility there, casting a wider net for the folks that play in the lower eligibility situations. I know you're not quite as keen on him as I am. Not that you hate Mookie or anything like that, but do you want to outline your slight concerns that you have that push him more into the late first, early second for you as opposed to like that firm first rounder?
He's just getting older, and we're starting to
Aren't we
see,
all?
yeah, just a tiny decline. He missed a number of games last season, and I
Mhm.
just don't know that we're going to see another 35 plus homer season again. I think he's probably more of a 20-ish to 25 homers, 15 steals, good average. It's fine. It's totally fine. But he's more of a uh, back end back end first rounder or early second rounder than the kind of mid to back end first rounder that we've seen.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of his, but I can't really push back too hard on any of that. His bat speed was down last year. He did miss the time with the fractured hand. Honestly, and again, sprint speed is not the only thing you need to get steals. If you're a smart base stealer, as he is, you can still get them. But it was pretty low last year. He was in the 31st percentile. So his foot speed's going down a little bit. He'll need to continue to be very sharp on the bases, but I just think he's going to continue to be more of that high teens guy. We have not seen him hit 20 since 2018 now. Now, he would have been on pace last year, right? He had 16 in 116 games, but simple fact is it was still only 16, 14 in a full season the year before, 12 in a full season the year before that. So, yeah, I mean, but he's part of that great lineup. I guess the one thing is the power. You say he's getting a bit older and you aren't going to be projecting him for the 30s anymore. Where did you end up projecting his home run total?
That is a good question, which I don't have an answer to
Well, while you're
off the
looking
top
it
of
up,
my
I'll
head.
point out he
Yeah.
did club 19 in 116 games there. And so if you just kind of do a, 650 plate appearance pace, it would have only been 24. So, we did see that power dip last year after 35 and 39 in 2022 and 23 respectively. So if that does start to decline at age 32, again, we're talking about degrees here, a couple picks where it moves him more into that latter first half, early second half, as opposed to the firm first rounder that he's been. I will say though, I do love the shortstop outfield eligibility, and that
Yeah.
that still keeps him firmly in the like 10 to 13 range for me. So we're off by a few picks there where I'm just my favoritism toward Betts makes me like him a little bit more than you.
I have him for 26 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 290 batting average.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong
No,
with that.
right. So
So
yeah.
plus, if you like that added flexibility, I have no problem. If you want to take him a little bit early, you'll still get a guy that's really good in the second round that complements him well.
And of course, anytime you're getting pieces of the Dodgers lineup, you got to feel pretty good about that. All right, let's talk about your boy, CJ Abrams. You're a longtime fan, and he had that huge second half breakout where he stole 80 billion bases in like 9 games in 2023. That really set him up last year to be a premium pick. And I'd say he panned out, right? It didn't go perfectly. I think people are projecting maybe more of a batting average improvement, and we didn't really see one. In fact, he was just who he's been. He's been a 246, 245 guy each of his 3 years. And he hit 246 last year, 20 homers, 31 steals. I think the bummer there is that he did miss some time, and it would have been nice to see what he could have done with another full complement of 151 games. He ended up playing 138. So, not too much missed time, but you can't really be upset about where things went last year. He's another guy that I had some concerns with, similar to Ellie De La Cruz. It's just in terms of like the batting average and what that could do to his fantasy value. And I think that I was wrong. The people that took him where they did, even with the high pick, even though he didn't completely have the biggest monstrous season, it was still very good at 20, 31, and 246. I know you didn't have a bunch of shares last year. Are you back in this year? He's obviously a firm high pick now. You're paying third round prices for Abrams. Yeah, pick 51. So you're paying firmly in the third round. Do you have issues with that price point on Abrams?
I don't. I just very rarely tend to
That'd be
target a
fourth round.
guy.
Sorry, my
Yeah,
brain fritz there.
I don't tend to target a guy there, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like I think he is probably like a high teens, low 20s homers guy, and I think last year was indicative of kind of a down year from stolen bases from CJ Abrams. We saw him steal 47 in 2023.
Well,
So
especially on that team, right? Because
yeah,
they had the
they
most
run.
steals, and he was super efficient. He was 47 for 53 that year. Excuse me, and he went 31 for 43 last year. So he just got caught a bit more, but I think the green light is still firmly there. Could he push back toward 50 this year, do you think, for Abrams?
I think he could if he stays healthy and he continues to run at the rate that the Nationals like to run. I mean, we saw Jesse Winker get 14 stolen bases.
I know,
So
I know that
like
is it. I keep going back to that. Like, if you want to know how much the Nats ran and how much team context drives things, just go look at Jesse Winker's steal total. That is
yeah,
absolutely insane.
yeah,
Okay, cool.
absolutely.
So with Abrams, yeah, I think if you're looking at like a 20-35 projection, keep the batting average in the 240s until he shows that he can do more than that. Maybe he spikes a big BABIP one year. He's got great speed, so you can steal some extra hits that way. We've never really seen a good BABIP though. 291, 279, 285. So, that it seems to be part of his game that he's not going to run those crazy high BABIPs, but sometimes you can just get lucky. So, it would be nice, and that would be kind of game changing if he ran something in the low 300s. Then he's probably hitting something closer to 260. So there is still breakout potential too to like really exceed that fourth round value. But I got no problem taking him in the fourth. He's not somebody I super target, but I wouldn't be mad if I quote unquote got stuck with him. Like, let's say I
Yep.
didn't have enough steals in those first 3 rounds and I ended up taking Abrams. I'd be okay with that. All right, let's talk Corey Seager, the old stalwart, a guy we've been talking about for years. We've had some knockdown, drag out debates on our
Yep.
boy and his inability to stay healthy, which, hey, it cropped up again last year. Now, the thing is, the last 2 years, in fact, even in 2023, when he was a firm MVP candidate, he still only played 119 games. The thing of it is, he usually is able to put up a full season's worth of production in those 120 to 125 games, but it's risky to bet on that, right? Like, at some point you got to be leery of a guy being able to continually put up 30 plus homers in 120 games. He's not getting any younger at age 31. I imagine you still share some of those concerns about Corey Seager's health, but at a 50 pick price point, where do you come out with Corey Seager this year?
I just think he's so good on a per plate appearance basis that it's hard not to just love Corey Seager.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can't project him for more than like 120 games because he's gotten what 536 plate appearances in 2023, 533 last year. If you spike a year where he stays healthy like 2022, great, that's amazing. But I projected him for 530 because that's pretty much what he's done each of the last 2 seasons. But those 530 plate appearances are massive on a per
Yeah.
plate appearance basis. Like Seager is just really, really good.
I'm going to say neutral team context, so you can't just
Yep.
say depends if I need steals or not. But Seager versus Abrams, they go right by each other.
Seager.
Let Okay. You going straight up Seager? I like that.
Because you get all that volume, and then when he's on the IL, you're getting other volume, right?
That's a great point.
It's not like you're taking it in like a gladiator format, which obviously aren't running anymore because they only run November, December.
Right.
I would probably take Abrams because I know I'm going to continuously get that volume. But Seager just offers four category production because he doesn't steal bases. But
Right.
and I feel like everything is going to be better in Texas this year. I feel like last year was just
I
a
agree.
World Series hangover. Everything's going to be better. I think the counting numbers will come back. I think Seager's going to be fine. There is risk, right? So, like, if I draft a Corey Seager, I'm probably not taking any other major gambles early on. But I love Corey Seager. I just think he's such an elite player.
You know what's so funny too is 2022 he actually played 151 games and his production cratered. That was the year that the BABIP fell apart. He only hit 245. So he ends up putting up similar numbers to what we've seen the last 2 years in 120 some games. But at least, he's shown that he can spike a big 150. So again, you would never project that. I do think it's very prudent to be projecting 120 to 125 games, but you could also get super lucky and he spikes another 150. And then I think he could chase down 40 homers with a 300 plus average, and that'd be great. But again, go for the projection. What we've seen the last few years, 30 something homers in 120 games with a good batting average and good counting categories on a per plate appearance basis, and take anything else that you might get as gravy. All right, let's go with Willie Adames, your new boy. First off, how geeked are you? Are you an Adames fan? Are you excited that he's your team
I'm
shortstop
an
now?
Adames fan. I wasn't super big fan of the signing. I mean, I just don't think the Giants are very good. Like, I think
Fair.
it's not that they're not very good. I think they're fine.
They're
Like,
boring.
I think that they are probably an 85 win team or something like that.
Right. It's just
You're
like a
never
boring
You're never
mid-tier
catching the
team.
Dodgers. Like, I don't think you're catching the Diamondbacks. Maybe if the Padres take a step back because they haven't been able to spend any money this offseason with all their financial issues,
Right.
maybe you can beat them. But like, that's like you're fighting for the last playoff spot, and
Right. That's exactly it.
Like, to me, I want to see them tear it down and just rebuild the farm system. And they just,
They've refused.
I've made this analogy over and over and over again over the last few years with the Giants. If you have 1 foot on either side of the fence is just going to get wedged in your ass. And that is what has happened with the Giants, because now they are perpetually like an 82 to 85
You're right.
team, and they're not getting better in any regards. Like, this is a dynasty league team that like isn't good enough to win, but they keep trying.
Yeah. And they keep drafting 30 somethings.
Right.
And you're just like, hey man, like they don't have a good enough farm system either.
In dynasty baseball, like, the key to dynasty baseball is to know what you are, right?
Right.
Are you a rebuilding team or are you a competitive team? You may be a competitive team and just not get there, right? That's how that happens. But like, knowing what you are makes you better for the long run. You're either competitive and you're going all in for it, or you're not competitive. It's the teams that try to balance both at the same times that often just get stuck in 5th through 8th place in your dynasty leagues all the time. And the Giants are the real life version of this. And
That's a great comp. It's a great comp. And like you pointed out, like, this is a remarkably difficult division. I think the D-backs, like the Rangers, is just a classic World Series hangover. I think they're going to be better this year. And they won 89 games last year. So like, their World Series hangover was still a pretty decent season. Padres 93 wins. You did point out that, they've had some financial issues where they might trade a piece or two, but I think they're going to be trading for guys that can still help them. So even if they do move a Suarez, they just move Jason Adam into the closer's role and they're still in a good spot there, or they trade a Dylan Cease to get something younger and cheaper. I don't think that they're going to tear things down. So you got 3 really good teams there that make it really, really difficult for the Giants to make that uphill climb. And it ends up looking like, damn, what are they really going to do besides win low 80s win total? All right, let's get more into Adames specifically. Whenever someone goes out to San Francisco as a hitter, there's immediate concern because of that ballpark. But as you and I always point out, it's really the lefties that take the bigger hit. It's not like a hitter's haven for righties or anything, but you can be successful out there as a right-hander. Now, he did club 32 homers last year, a career high, and had 21 steals. We've never seen that kind of volume from him. And I don't know if that was walk year. Let me pump my numbers. He went 21 for 25, so he was also super efficient with a 251 average, up from 217 the year before. What do we see from Adames his first year in San Francisco? Do you have concerns that that was a walk year push and that everything comes down? Or can he basically be that guy again, somewhere in the upper 20s, low 30s with the homers? I don't know where. I guess team context would determine the steals, and they're probably going to come down then. And then can he hit 251 in
Everything,
San Francisco?
everything's going to come down. Everything's going to
Okay.
come down. Now, I still think he is going to be valuable, and I think he will accumulate. But the Brewers were the number 2 team in baseball
Yes.
in stolen bases,
They run.
and the Giants were second to last.
Jeez.
Now
And
you can
part
say,
of that is they don't have guys, but
yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
Adames is some burner that they have to turn loose. I think that they're
But
probably going to
I
keep
think
a
that
yellow
is
light
part
on
of
him.
that is just the team strategy is they don't
Right.
want to get run on the base paths.
Right.
So like, yes, you can say like part of it is, well, they don't have a lot of fast guys,
But he's not either.
they also build a team of not a lot of fast guys because they don't
Mhm.
want that. So yeah, I don't think you're going to see a crap ton of stolen bases from Adames. I think the power is definitely going to take a big, or not a big hit, but a decent size hit. Like the park factors, like you've mentioned, like it's better for lefty, or sorry, better for righties than it is for lefties. It's not that much better. Like it's
Right.
still one of the worst parks in baseball for right-handed hitting power or right-handed hitting power. So
Yeah, it's third worst behind PNC, or ahead of only PNC and Progressive in Cleveland. A 79 park factor for homers. So that's tough.
yeah. So like right now in the chat, Brett's saying 25-10. Yeah, I think it's
I think that's right.
I think that is right. So his ADP right now, it's not bad.
About
And
pick 100.
yeah, like I don't think that is out of pocket. But I also think as we start getting into like drafts in March that he could drop further. And if he continues to drop further, then I think he becomes a little bit of a value because he will accumulate, but you have to look at him as an accumulator. You cannot look at him as the guy he was in Milwaukee last year.
Yeah, and that's what I would underscore the most there is do not get hung up on last year's numbers for Adames. I really do think there was some walk year factor to it where he was pushing. He was on a team that let him run. He took advantage of that. That's a good power park to be in. That's actually 6th in home run park factor for righties. Now, the one thing that is kind of nice and that might help him kind of overcome the Oracle Park of it all is that the other parks in the division are good to hit in. In fact, would you believe that Dodger Stadium is actually the #1 park factor for righty home runs over the last 3 years?
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised by that. Yankee Stadium, Great American, Coors over at 5, San Diego at 7, and then the Diamondbacks, they're actually lower down at 20. So, and again, worth noting that they don't play quite as many divisional games as they used to. So you're not going to stack up a ton of numbers there. And you still have to go against the Dodgers pitchers and the Padres pitchers. But you do get to go against the Rockies pitchers. So he will get a handful of games there. And maybe he can make up the difference and push closer to 30. But I think the 25-10 that Brett mentions in the chat is very apt for Willie Adames. And at pick 100, it's fine. But if he does dip down, like you say, because we know pitching has a big push up and a lot of different hitters get pushed down, I think he could be one of those guys that pushes more like to 115, 120. And at that point, I'm definitely taking Adames. I'd have no problem with that price point.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into tier 3 here and close it out. We got 3 really interesting young players here that have different profiles. You got Xavier Edwards as a speed demon type. You got the power speed Oneil Cruz, who's kind of an Ellie De La Cruz knockoff. And then you got Volpe, who's kind of in between. We don't really know what he is. You know, he had the power sellout in the first year there 2 years ago, made a concerted effort for more contact last year. And it did work from a standpoint that he didn't strike out as much, but he still only hit 243. Now that was up from 209, but then the power went from 21 to 12 and the steals were still great from 24 to 28. So let's take them in order and start with Xavier Edwards. He was a second half stud. He was winning people leagues over there with the Marlins. Absolutely popping off. Ended up going 31 for 35 on the bases, but hit 328. You know, we talk about how difficult it is to find batting average on the waiver wire, and that is absolutely true. But sometimes you spike a gem that you didn't expect, and that was exactly what Xavier Edwards was. And he was hitting the ball like crazy, getting to that 328 average. Now he hit 1 homer. So you have to plan around drafting it. Now it was in 70 games. By the way, 31 steals in 70 games is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But even if you do some extrapolation there, you're talking like 3 homers, right? You just can't project much there. So what do you do with somebody like Xavier Edwards? Obviously, you know how I feel about this player type where with the Rabbits, I want to plan for it to go into the draft and build that power base if I'm going to take them. He goes around pick 150, which I think is fair. How legit is the average? How legit is the speed? What can we get out of Xavier Edwards here this year in his first full season?
So he had almost a 400 BABIP.
Yeah.
I
And you
don't
don't
know
think that'll
how.
hold?
No, I don't. His XBA was 352.
Okay.
Um, so now he kind of did this before in 2023 in his really small major league sample where he hit 295 and the XBA was 248. So, I
Ooh.
mean, this is like one of these guys where I like to talk about like, hey, I like guys with good skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in when I say good skills, good contact skills, guys who make a lot of contact because they give themselves the opportunity to get lucky.
Make things
Uh,
happen, baby.
exactly. So I think that for me, it is really, really important to like draft these guys, but also you have to plan for them, right? Like because Xavier Edwards is on maybe the worst offense in baseball.
Oh my
I
God, they're
mean,
so wretched,
maybe the
dude.
worst park in baseball. And so like you are literally drafting him for stolen bases and then the hope that the batting average somewhat repeats. You can't project him for 328.
No.
Uh, I I don't love drafting these guys because all it takes is a pulled hamstring, and if you were projecting 30 stolen bases, all of a sudden you now have to find 30 stolen bases,
And the
right?
average will come down too, right? On
Yeah.
something like
Mhm.
that. If you're talking about lower half injury for a speed demon, then they're not legging out as many infield hits. And so then that starts to, it's a cascading effect there. And it really is difficult to latch onto these guys. So I'm with you. I'm torn on that. One thing I do like is that despite not having great power, he did walk at an 11% clip that last year. And that is in line with his minor leagues where he didn't really display any big power there either. So he knows the zone. And a lot of times we see these guys, they'll do it in the minors, then they get challenged at the big league level because pitchers say, well, you're not going to go yard on me, so I'm going to challenge you. So I was impressed by that. That keeps him on base. So even if the batting average comes down to say like 275, 280, which would still be useful, even though it's not game changing, if he's getting on base at a 360, 370 clip, you're still going to get those SB opportunities. But I'm with you. Rabbits scare me. I have a difficult time drafting them when you're getting no power and that risk of putting all those eggs in that one basket where, like you said, a bum foot, a bum ham, it doesn't take much there on the lower half, and all of a sudden that dries up. Plus, this team effing
Yeah.
stinks, like you said. So there's not going to be great run totals or anything like that either. So
No.
I like him, but I would just like Xavier Edwards on a different team. So I probably won't be drafting him, even though I think pick 150 is not unfair. It's just, I'm probably just going to look elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, value wise, he ends up coming out looking pretty good because I think you can comfortably project like a 280 ish batting average. And let me
Hmm.
actually double check what I projected him for, and just a crap ton of stolen bases because they're just going to let him play and run.
Right.
Uh, but it's just so hard to craft a team around a guy like this that it
Yep.
makes it really, really difficult for you to actually do good roster construction, which is
Projections are in the upper 60s for run totals, by the way, while you're looking up your batting average projection for
yeah,
him. Like, that's so bad, dude. That's
it
so
is.
bad.
It's terrible. Now, I will say this: he only had like 300 plate appearances last year. I think he had 39 runs. So, like, if you just double
Yeah,
that, that's 80. But like,
I would take that.
that's also like everything going right in the way that his small sample did last year, and we can't
Hmm.
just expect everything to go right for him all year long. So, I think that that is kind of the big issue there.
You don't
So,
think Connor Norby is going to be driving him in left and right?
no.
That guy took it
Oh,
on the chin last episode.
so I projected him for a 267 batting
Okay,
average.
so, and again, oops, sorry. You
I
can live with
definitely need to
that.
lower his runs projection though, because
What'd you
that
put him at?
I put 85, and I think that's care. So
Yeah, at two,
I think he's going to drop quite a bit in my
especially
rankings.
if he's only going to hit 267. If you got him more in the 280s, then maybe he could squeeze out 80 something runs. But yeah, if you got
Yeah.
him down at 267, I would be concerned there. What'd you get for his OBP? Did you give him a good walk rate again in the like 9-10% range?
Let me look. Let's see.
Because again,
On
that is a
base
nice supplement for a speed demon to get on base.
253. Or sorry, 353. 353.
Okay, yeah. So if he's getting on base at a 35% clip, you will still see the SB opportunities there for Xavier Edwards. But again, just a tough fit for me because the team sucks so bad. If he was on even a mediocre team, I'd have a lot more excitement about him, even with the flaws in his profile. It's just that once you throw in the no power, so again, it's not just the homers that you have to plan for, it's the runs and ribbies too that you have to supplement. So when you have all that factored in with the horrendous team, juice isn't worth the squeeze for me. All right, let's go to O'Neal Cruz. And similar to Ellie, and I know the comps, they might seem lazy, but they're just so easy. With the way they're both built, first off, they're both super tall. They smack the living hell out of the ball. They don't necessarily elevate it that well yet. They swing and miss a ton, and they got great power speed. Now, he's moving to the outfield, so that's going to delineate them a little bit, but he'll still be shortstop eligible, of course. But like Mookie, now he's going to have the shortstop outfield dual eligibility here. What do we see out of O'Neal Cruz? He went 2020 last year, 21 homers, 22 steals, 259 average, pretty good season. So again, had him on my bus list, took the L on that. Or no, I didn't. I'm an idiot. In fact, when I was saying don't draft Ellie, I was saying take O'Neal instead, and then his price started to rise. But ended up going pretty well. Can we see more this year? Or will we see more this year? Of course we can. What do you think at age 26 he's able to do now, 2 years removed from that broken foot?
Yeah, so like my projections have him pretty much doing a 2020 season.
Okay.
Right, with a 250 batting average. So
more of the same, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, kind of just rinse and repeat. It's really hard on a guy like O'Neal Cruz because the ceiling is off the charts and the floor is off the charts too.
Right.
So like when you're doing a projection on him, you're going for the median. You're going like, hey, this is what I kind of think he will do. Not so much about, or sorry, this is not so much what you think he will do, but like where kind of the middle bears out. But like if Ellie goes 30-30, am I gonna be surprised? Or sorry, not Ellie, O'Neal.
Right.
If O'Neal goes 30-30, am I going to be surprised? No. However, if he goes like, 10-10 or like 12-15 or something like that with a bad batting average, I'm not going to be surprised either because it's got
the batting average is that's what would surprise me or not surprise me is if he hit 220 and still even if he still went 20-20 with that, I wouldn't be surprised because of the swing and miss risk. And
well, and you got to factor in
the
the injury risk because he's been a guy who he's big, he's burly, he plays hard in the field. He's been injured a number of times. So
playing a new position.
Yeah, I think there are a number of variables on a guy like O'Neal Cruz, and I don't like variables, especially when I'm drafting as high as a guy like O'Neal Cruz goes. So
44.
I tend to stay away from this profile because it's really hard to project what he actually will be. And therefore, I tend to want to go, hey, I'm going to take a look guy I can feel a lot more comfortable penciling numbers for. And I'll take those risks on those guys kind of later in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, again, the concerns that we have about Ellie, they extend to O'Neal Cruz. He is cheaper down at pick 44 versus a top 5, top 6 pick. But you also run the risk of a worse park, worse team. Although I do like that Tommy Pham signing. He's got Pham and Reynolds in front of him.
I love that Tommy.
We could really see some RBI jump. He had 76 last year. Wouldn't surprise me if he was able to creep into the 90s there. Again, it's not a great team, but like maybe I know you were on them last year. Maybe taking a step forward. Maybe you were a year early. Maybe classic Sporer year early situation there because Pham and Reynolds ahead of him. That could be nice to set him up for some good ribby totals. Yeah,
I did a whole series on TikTok where somebody had asked me like, hey, who are the teams that could surprise in 2025 and make the playoffs? And so what I did was I pretty much covered the entire NL Central.
Yeah, because it's a sneaky division.
I think the Brewers actively got worse this offseason, right? Like I don't think, and so like
them and the Cardinals spent $12 combined.
Yeah, like yes, they made one trade for Nestor Cortez, but they gave up their prize closer in Devin Williams. So like I don't know if the Brewers are actually a step above the rest of the division. I think any team can win that division. I don't think it's going to be the Cardinals.
I completely agree.
Like the Reds have made some interesting moves, and I think they underperformed last year. I think Pittsburgh has made some interesting moves, and I think they underperformed last year. And I think their young
Cubs
players are
made
just going to
some
get better and
huge
better.
moves.
The Cubs made some moves. Like
They
I
could get
think that
Bragg.
they could like. I think any of these teams can win this division, and so yeah, could Pittsburgh kind of be the surprise team? Sure, they could. Would I project them to? No, I'm not going to project them to. But
No, but
like
they
if
are
you're looking for a
a
long
dark
shot
horse.
bet, yeah, if you're looking for a long shot bet in the division, I bet you get pretty good odds in Vegas.
Yeah, they have a true ace. They have a badass number two in Jared Jones. Keller as a three is not too bad. Again, I love that Pham move. I think he can help, stabilize the top of the order there, help guys like Reynolds, Cruz, and Joey Bart get some RBI opportunities there by constantly being on base. Still on the Cabrian Hayes train at least one more year, although, I'm not
Now's the
drafting him
year
as
to
much as I
be.
did.
Now's the year to be on the Cabrian Hayes train. Like his Cabrian Hayes' ADP. I'm looking it up as we speak.
It's an afterthought, right?
Yeah, like Hayes is going at pick 346.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Like
So
now,
yeah,
like
now's the time.
you get to put him in as like your CI.
Right.
Sure, like why not take the gamble?
Yeah, I'll
So
take one more year. I've been a Cabrizi guy for years. Here's hoping he can finally tap in. He can be 28 though. It's put up or shut up time. All right, let's finish up with Anthony Volpe. Like I said, he's had a mixed bag these first couple of years. The steals have been consistent, so that's a nice piece that you can kind of bank on. Like I said, he did make a concerted effort for more contact last year, and it did yield results. Again, I know he only hit 243, but you got to think about where he's coming from, and it was a 209. So that was a substantial jump, but it came at the expense of 9 homers from 21 to 12. So where do we go from here with Anthony Volpe? He's still going to be just 24 years old, so still in a growth phase for sure. Can he put everything together? Can we get a 2020 season? Does the average push up? Does he have the skills? Can he get his ass over a 300 OBP for God's sakes? He's been at 288 now for his career. That's wretched. Where do we go from here with Volpe?
Oh, I still believe in Anthony Volpe.
Mm-hmm.
I know last year was brutal, but I just feel like there is a good hitter under there, and we know he can still hit the ball hard, though he didn't show it a ton last year. We know that like he improved his own contact and went from 86 or 82.6% up to 86% last year, so above league average. So I think he's just young and becoming a better hitter. I think people kind of forget that like he's only 23 years old. He debuted at 21.
Takes time.
Yeah, and he takes time. So like for me, I think that this is a guy that is just going to continue to get better and better. I mean, obviously, you can't really project that necessarily. So I haven't projected for. I do have him projected for more home runs, 19 home runs and 28 stolen bases with 241 batting average.
I
But
think
like,
that.
yeah, like if that is what the median projection is, and we expect a 23-year-old, he's going to be 24 at the start of the season, to get better. Like, I think there is a world in which Anthony Volpe figures things out, hits for a batting average, gets back to that 20 homer mark with 30 stolen bases, and like not a mediocre average, but like a good average. He makes good in zone contact, and I just think this team around him is so good that he's going to get a lot of runs and RBIs. I'm a fan of Anthony Volpe, and I'm kind of taking the dip on the ADP.
Yeah, I am too. He's in the 130s right now. I don't mind that price point. He did still score 90 runs despite the sub 300 OBP, which is
Mhm.
really impressive. Because
Yeah.
then if you really, even if you just get to like a 310, 320, which is still kind of mediocre, or actually I'll say bad, like that's still pretty bad. Then he's pushing triple digits. Let alone if he does take the breakout, and we do see Volpe push all the way back into the upper teens, low 20s with the power, keep the speed great, and then all of a sudden if he's putting up like a 330 OBP, now you're talking like 110 runs is very possible with the guys that are behind him. So
With
this is still a buy profile for me all day.
with Gleyber Torres out of the picture, Volpe is projected to lead off for these Yankees. That
Yep.
could be 120 runs.
Yep.
Not projecting that, but it could be.
No, but if the development, if he jumps a step, right, doesn't just take an
Yeah.
incremental step, but takes a leap, then you are talking about some major runs with a few a decent homer total there. Like I said, something 17 to 21, and then 30 plus steals. Like
Yeah.
the breakout could definitely be there. Again, you don't project it, but you don't have to at pick 135. you put him down for basically what he did last year, and then you hope that that he's ready to take that big leap. Yeah, I'm still buying on Volpe. He's way too young for me to quit him, and even though we've seen
Yeah,
such a mixed bag these first 2 years, we've seen enough to keep me interested for sure.
absolutely.
All right, there we go. That's our first part of the shortstop preview. We will dive back in deeper on Friday and get into those mid and later tiers there. It's an interesting position that's going to develop here as we continue on because there's still some big names to get into, some rising names that I'm very excited to see where your projections come out with. So we'll talk again in a couple days. Take care.
Take it easy.